Hey guys, here with Mr. Mark Selby for the Nickel Show in person. What a privilege. How are you, sir?
Live in London, doing very well.
Live in London.
Live in London.
What are you saying? You wanted those sort of nickel music and theme tags.
Exactly. I think we're at that point now in our show
Really?
development where
Like
we need the intro clip. Yeah, exactly.
Like a
Yes.
really dodgy American local
Like
TV station.
Exactly.
Let's next
Production
time.
quality. Yeah.
Something to look forward to next week. Okay. World of Nickel is a much sunnier, happier place at the moment.
It is, and so it continues to bounce around in the 18.5 to 20,000 range.
Yeah.
We actually almost hit 20,000 about a week ago. We got within about $30 or $40 a ton, but then it whipped around and then went back down to test support lower. So today we're trading just under $19,000 a ton. So, but still, again,
You're taking that at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, we'll hang in that range, and then again we'll punch through 20 as we get through the fall. And we get back into the other drop off in the Philippine ore supply once again next fall.
Okay, for the Philippines, obviously we talked ad nauseum, I think, recently about the way they're trying to get a control of the kind of pricing environment, also all sorts of regulations in place and monitoring output.
Oh, they're
sticking with it.
Big news this week. So, Indonesia's definitely been sticking with it. And then Indonesia and Philippines had a little meeting about sort of managing and coordinating, nickel supply together. So, that's, again, I think if anyone had any doubts about, what Indonesia's been up to, that extra step is
they are going in tandem.
Yeah,
they're working on that together
to make sure that they're going to manage supply to the market.
There we go.
And the other piece is, like, we're in the skepticism phase, right? Because lots of smart people missed the $4,000 move in December, right? So they then have to be skeptical about whether it's going to stay or not. And so, again, I've got a bunch of charts in a presentation that we talk about, but fundamentally, all the moves that Indonesia did over a year was really about transferring value from largely Chinese-controlled processing companies and transferring value to a bunch of Indonesian miners, right? Hundreds of Indonesian mining companies are now getting 50% more for every ton of ore that they mined versus 6 months ago, and a bunch of massive amount more tax revenue for governments. So, you have to say to yourself, okay, well, if you think that Indonesians are going to backtrack on it, you're saying that in 6 months, governments will willingly give up a bunch of tax revenue that they've just got, and they're going to say to, hundreds of Indonesian mining companies, oh, sorry, we need to be nicer to the Chinese processing companies, and we're going to take away a bunch of your revenue that you've just got for the last 6 months. That's the implication of that skepticism playing out. So it's not going to happen. And as the year goes on, more and more people are going to believe. Again, I've seen it already. Just in the last 3 months. There's more and more people coming to the table saying, I actually understand. And believe that Indonesia is going to stick to the guns going forward. So
well, not many people mess with the Chinese government. I think we may see at the end of this week when the USA turns up on force. But I am seeing this kind of value retention across Africa, South America, where people are saying, well, actually, let's just kind of hang on to some of that money that's been taken elsewhere. They're working hard. But to go up against the Chinese, I guess, cartel in a way, I'm pretty brave. So, so I'm not surprised there's an element of doubt, but so far it's holding, and I guess every intent to hold. So that's what you're saying.
They made some of 2 weeks ago, they made some minimum price formula adjustments, and so they went a little bit too far. So they're basically, they've cut a compromise there, but it's still a big step up from where it was. And over time, don't be surprised to see the price move towards that minimum price over time. And as you said, no, I mean, there's a whole wave of resource nationalism going on. And a lot of companies have done it in a much worse way, in a very bad way for both the country and the companies involved. I'm sure Chinese companies aren't thrilled with the changes that have happened, but for somebody like Tsingshan, who's, largely vertically integrated, they own mines as well as, have direct economic interest in mines, as well as the processing plants. They'll have more. They'll be paying more money in taxes and royalties and so forth. But they know they're still better off relatively than the other companies that are getting hit doubly hard. So as long as they're winning, they're happy. So
and look, and I guess the other factor is somewhere in Indonesia we talked about in the past, where the grades are falling as well. That's great. It doesn't help. So where I'm going with this is I wonder what the Chinese, big consumer of this, and others are looking to in the future in terms of having a plan B and C and D when the Indonesia thing eventually kind of moves a different way, shall we say?
So, I mean, again, we saw it in aluminum, right? So in aluminum, they had domestic bauxite resources. Any of the Western aluminum companies said, oh, it's too low grade to process.
Yeah.
Chinese were fine processing it, right? And then those kind of ran down and they went to Indonesia. And again, Indonesia, oh, it's the wrong chemistry, bauxite.
Yeah.
You know, no one will ever use it. And again, they mined that like crazy. They kind of ran that down and they still needed more. And so then they went to Guinea and you know, there's massive bauxite resources that are there, and they've kind of tapped into that. The challenge in the nickel space is, I mean, Indonesia really is the Saudi Arabia of nickel. You know, it has a massive resource base. We know where the rest of the laterite deposits in the world are. Last one was discovered of any scale was discovered in the 1980s, and so, you know, the reality is the scale of the nickel market today. Some of these deposits may have seemed big in 1985, but the nickel market's 10 times bigger now. So, you know, yes, you may see some nickel come from Ivory Coast. You may see some nickel come from Guatemala. But, you know, even if you add up those extra bits and pieces, it's not, you know, it's not going to change the fundamental picture at all.
So, okay, demand has significantly increased.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Western companies talking about the game of getting into production anytime soon.
Yeah.
And we'll leave Philippines and Indonesia park it to one side for now. What does that mean? What's the impact for public companies like yourself when you sort of seeing that kind of wave of demand, that huge delta between supply and that demand in a kind of geopolitical environment, heated, as you say? We've talked energy costs rising because of the little incident that's going on at the moment, and also the reticence, because nationalism, reticence to allow big companies like big countries like China come in and take a big chunk of, you know, opportunities like yours, etc. Does that help? I mean, how do you view the landscape and environment?
Well, no, I mean, this is where, you know, again, government's taking longer than we'd like, but the piles of money. Mark Carney announced another $25 billion to go into major projects a week ago Monday. And so that money will start to flow. So again, projects like ours and a handful of others that are well positioned, you know, close to the finish line, you know, are really going to reap the rewards of A, helping get China out of the supply chain, B, be in a position to help fill that gap. And we now need projects from elsewhere. We've talked about on the show. We need all the projects. And so, you know, that creates a massive opportunity for us. And again, for investors in the space today, you know, we've got a lot more people interested in nickel again with nickel prices where they are. And the reality is, you know, there's 200 gold stories and there's half a dozen nickel stories. Right? So, you know, that's, you know, so as that capital comes back into nickel, it's got to chase a few stories, and so the few stories that are there should really reap the benefits going forward.
Obviously, look, you've been in the sector for a while, and you need a line of sight to, you know, how the industry is changing and the demand will change as well. But to kind of work through to kind of major project status in a very difficult market like that, there must have been times where you went, is this the right move? Look what those gold guys are doing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I bought a gold mine once, right? So I parked a nickel project and bought a gold mine, and it turned out to be a pretty good trade.
Right.
But that's the part is, you know, that was definitely the right call at that time. You know, we took advantage of a bottom in the mining market. January 2016 was the bottom. You know, that's people were worried about Anglo American and Glencore. And we did use our little market cap and $2.5 million cash to pick up a nickel gold asset, which was Beta Hunt. And you know, a third of a copper mine. Both of those investments worked out really, really well. You know, this time, it was, you know, I wasn't in any rush to get back in the sector, but, you know, when I got into Royal Nickel in 2010, it was because there wasn't many Western projects because they all got built and financed and built in 2005-06. And you know, it's got even worse. We really have made, you know, other than what we've discovered in the Timmins area, and one or two other discoveries, there's been very few new discoveries in a metal that's going to be 5 million tons a year. Right. You know. That's a lot of nickel.
It's a lot of nickel, but I'm just always working on the kind of investment thesis and psychology of investing. When in markets like that, no company or CEO or investor is rushing into start a new nickel company in the last 4 years, right? It's been tough. So it kind of wipes out a whole bunch of competition, but it does for the supply into the market. The name of the game, I think, in that scenario is like stay relevant, move the project forward, and, you know, reap the benefits down the line. Is that you feel vindicated?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. You either end up really stupid, or it works out okay.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, and that's the pieces.
Yeah.
You know, there's some new services that give you the weekly drill results. You know, and every week I see 100 gold intervals and 25 silver intervals. I see 5 rare earth intervals, and most weeks there's no nickel intervals, and half the time it's one of our results, right? So that's the reality of what we've been able to come through.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's interesting learning for me.
Yeah.
News from you guys. Obviously, a bit of an announcement on today.
Yeah, so big permitting decision. So so we got the draft assessment report. We've got our draft permit conditions in place.
Yeah.
There's a final 30-day public consultation, and then we go back and make the recommendation to the minister and get the approval. So we're targeting. We've said several months ago, early summer, and it looks like it's going to be early summer. So
okay.
And again, having that permit is the big yes/no one, and it's a massive step forward from us.
And just to kind of state the obvious, that was a long time in the making.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's been a 4-year process to get
right.
here. So yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We're in the final steps now.
Touch wood.
Yep.
Touch wood.
Yep.
So we're about to talk about kind of news in the market. Who else is up to what?
Yeah. So fortunately, Sherritt, the Canadian refinery mining operation in Cuba, there was a new executive order. Trump's sharing the love all around the world. Unfortunately, Cuba is one of the targets of his love. And so it was to the point where some board members had to resign, and then they were actually pulling the employees out of Cuba.
Right.
From all kinds of things. So they still have several months of inventory at the Fort Saskatchewan refinery. So we'll see what happens with that. So it's unfortunate to see all that doesn't need to be. And it could be a great source of nickel for the U.S. if the U.S. could get their head around Cuba at some point. But that's where it is. So I know there's several people in the company. So tough to see that. Another. On the good news front, metals companies, the deep sea nodule mining had 2 big announcements. So the NOAA, don't ask me what it stands for, is the group that signs off on the permit for the deep sea application. And so the step was that the report that they filed was in compliance. And so they're now into the next stage of the permitting. And then just earlier this week, they announced a deal with All Seas, who's basically does things in the deep sea, to start nodule mining at a rate of 3 million tons per annum. In 2027, that's about 35,000 tons of nickel per year. The key thing with the nodules, there's lots of arm waving about it, but at the end of the day, they're mostly manganese, and so they will have a bigger impact on the manganese market before they have any impact on the nickel market.
What's that in terms of supply? And
I think it's about 20 million tons. Don't quote me. And I think they'll produce it. Just that alone will be, I think, about 1 million tons of manganese. But again, don't quote me on it. I'll come back with more accurate numbers there. On the drilling front, EV Nickel is our neighbor in Timmins. Nice 35-meter, 1% nickel. Nice to see stuff above 1%. They're drilling below an old mine, one of the old smaller mines in the area. So it's good to see someone continuing to, again, as we said, there's very few nickel drill intervals these days. And they had one. And then one group that has some nickel, it's more copper than nickel, is Next Metals in Botswana. They're continuing to drill and connect these 2 deposits at depth. It hadn't hit me before. I knew it was, you see the diagram, and I knew it was deep, but the thing that's, we'll see how it goes, but these holes are 1,500 to 2,000 meters deep. So, there's definitely decent copper and nickel there, but it's a long way down. So, we'll see what happens when they get to the feasibility study stage. So that's
there
it.
There you go. There's the carpet. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
What would they say in the design curve?
We need some
more music.
We need some cheesy line, and then a music thing that comes up and
and now over to the weather with Tom.
There you go. Exactly.
Exactly. I think one of
we would stack our papers and tap.
I want to do that. I think we should do that. Well, folks, there you go. Some of these things better in person. I think one of the NOAA. I think one of the A stands for Aquaman.
National Oceans.
No,
and
it's Aquaman.
Atmospheric.
No, I prefer mine. Okay. That's definitely a wrap.